So I'll talk to them about that. And then,
Okay.
yeah. And I am going to hit record in, and it's Nick Bitz,
You
right?
got it. Yep.
Okay. I just want to make sure I pronounce it right.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. In 3, 2, 1. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have a special guest. His name is Dr. Nick Bitz, and he is a naturopathic physician, and he specializes in Ayurvedic medicine. He's a leading voice in the natural products industry and currently serves as Senior Vice President of Product Development at Neurohacker Collective. His areas of expertise include nootropics, anti-aging medicine, biohacking, herbology, nutrition, and dietary supplements. And our talk today is going to be all about aging. It's obviously one of my favorite topics. So, what causes it? How can we age better and preferably without disease? And with that, welcome, Dr. Nick. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, Sandy. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to delve deep into this whole aging topic because it's I think more and more people are talking about this. Aging is becoming like instead of something that's inevitable and we're going to fall apart and have all these diseases, people are talking about being proactive. So I have to start with asking you, how did this interest come about in your career?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. I got interested in holistic health just through self-care practices. I've practiced yoga. I've worked with acupuncturists. I've had a deep interest in botanicals, really for my whole life. And I think inherent in the conversation about aging is this idea of just creating health and wellness in the body. And so there's so much that we can do. There's a lot of cutting edge modern therapeutics as they relate to aging, but there's a lot of old school traditional aspects too that are important to acquire, to learn about. And I'm really interested in bringing those two worlds together, the modern medicine with a lot of the traditional medicine and traditional thinking. And for me, it's just all about creating wellness and health in individuals. And it's so interesting because I think that it's become more fun. People are more proactive in their healthcare than ever before. I would say a decade ago, people were not interested in dietary supplements. Botanicals were super foreign to the Western mindset. But I think people have come a long way in the last decade. And now with social media, influencers, this uprising of natural whole foods, we see this really start to change within the mainstream society. So I think it's an exciting moment. I love being in the field. I've been doing this forever, and I'm happy to see that it's finally starting to catch fire within society.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you on that. And I actually feel a change. Like I even see it with my parents. So my dad is going to be 86 in April and my mom is going to be 77 and they're like biohackers. And I love it. My mom's like, "Okay, well, what can I do about this? Tell me what I can take. Tell me how I should eat." And I actually love it because it's catching on not just with, midlife, but earlier and later, right?
It's a really good point. I mean, if you look at millennials, they are super interested in health.
Mhm.
And they're very proactive. They're taking dietary supplements. They're trying out various diets. They're interested in organic foods. They're going to farmers market. It's just part of that conversation. And you see the older generations now that are accepting in it as well. I mean, same thing with my parents. My parents are taking ashwagandha. They take turmeric.
Yeah.
They're doing fish oils. They're doing these really foundational, basic nutritional therapies that are meaningful and significant in their effects, even late in life. And so I think it's cool because it spans that full spectrum of individuals. It's not just baby boomers. It's not just millennials. It literally is everybody right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about what aging actually is.
Yeah, it's a big topic. I mean, there's a lot of theories around what is aging. There isn't one theory though that really encapsulates aging as a concept. And so, as a result, really, scientists have started putting together various theories into larger theories. And so, right now, the leading theory for aging is called the hallmarks of aging. And I know you've touched that on your show right now. But this idea was really formed in 2013. It was published in an aging journal. It's the most cited article within the aging category as a whole. And what it does is it breaks down aging into 9 processes that kind of underline and drive the aging process as a whole. It's the best that we have right now. It certainly isn't all inclusive. It doesn't cover absolutely everything. In fact, there are right now 5 more hallmarks that are proposed. So we know 9. There are now 5 more, which include inflammation, right? We all know inflammation drives aging, but right now it's not in those core 9 hallmarks.
Right.
As well as microbial or flora disturbances in the gut. We know that has a huge impact on the body, on the brain, on the aging process. And so we are introducing new hallmarks little by little over time as well.
Okay, so let's break it down really simply. What are these 9 hallmarks? So you mentioned just now the other ones that might be added, right? Or are looking to be added.
Yep.
Makes sense, by the way. The inflammaging is a big term, right?
Yeah, big term. I mean, we've known about inflammaging since about the year 2000. So the fact that it's taken almost 2 decades to be introduced as a driver of aging is shocking in my mind, because I would have put it first. It's something that we hear about so much, and people are trying to undercut the inflammation processes in the body. But as they stand right now, so there are 9 foundational hallmarks. They can be divided into 3 categories. The first one are known as primary hallmarks, and these are really the causes of aging, and they lead to damage. And then you have secondary ones that are a response to the primary ones. And then the third category are integrative hallmarks. And these are what we see as a manifestation or kind of an expression within a clinical setting. So they're kind of the end result. And so within the kind of the primary, that first category, there are 4 known hallmarks. So you have genomic instability, which basically is just damage to DNA. You have telomere attrition, which is the shortening of telomeres. And the telomeres are the little caps on the genes and the DNA that protect DNA and keep them whole. We have epigenetic alterations, and that's just really modifications in gene expression over time. And then we have a loss of what's called proteostasis, which basically means that you lose intelligence with how you build and degrade proteins over time. And so you have these misfolded proteins, you have these clumping of proteins, you have accumulation of these kind of misinformed proteins within cells that can lead to aging. So all 4 of those really are the key drivers of the aging process. And then as a result of those, you have 3 secondary hallmarks, and you have what's called dysregulated nutrient sensing, which basically means that a cell loses the ability to sense nutrients and use nutrients and to make decisions based upon, do we have enough B12? And you make informed decisions from that to create certain processes within the body, as an example.
Can I stop you there? So
Sure.
with the nutrient sensing, wouldn't that just mean that you just need to eat more nutrient dense foods or take supplements to help with that? Would that make even sense?
Yeah, and that's part of it. Part of it is the nutrient input that you're getting into the body, but the other part is how are your cells responding to those nutrients?
Right, right.
And so
I find that fascinating.
It's incredibly fascinating. And so just adding more greens into your diet is not going to solve everything, right? It's important that you have those nutrients, that you're giving the body the chance to create health. But that doesn't mean that your body then is going to use those nutrients in the right way to actually physically create health.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So the other secondary one, we mentioned deregulated nutrient sensing. Mitochondrial dysfunction is another one, a big topic, very big area when it comes to aging. And the third one is cellular senescence. And that's, I think, right now the most buzzworthy topic within the aging category. Cellular senescence really is just the accumulation of these cells that are non-dividing in the body, which then implant themselves in tissues. They impact the structure of tissues, the function of tissues, and they also secrete these inflammatory compounds in the body that creates this chronic low-level inflammation systemically in the body. So I would love to talk more about that in a moment.
Okay.
Because I think it's completely fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
But the other two are stem cell exhaustion and then a change in intercellular communication. And so when you step back and you look at all of these 9 hallmarks, they can be incredibly technical and incredibly sciencey. But really what I do is I just step back and I say, okay, cool. We've really captured a lot of the major processes that are driving aging, and we've labeled them, and we understand how they interrelate. They don't work in isolation. They're all related, and they all impact the other 9 as it relates. And so that is an evolving model. It certainly isn't the end all and be all, but it's the best that we have presently.
Yeah, it is. It is really so. Let's get into some of the juicy stuff. Like in terms of you mentioned cellular senescence as one of your favorite hallmarks to talk about. So maybe do you want to deep dive on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason that I think that's so juicy and so interesting is because it's so new, and there's so much interest right now and so much money and time and resources that have been put into this area presently because it has so much potential. So cellular senescence, again, a kind of a technical term.
Yes.
The word senescence it basically comes from a Latin word senex, that means to grow old. And so cellular senescence then is the process by which cells in the body grow old. And it's a normal, healthy process. We have 37 trillion cells in the body, and they all are growing old. And a lot of them will turn over, and new cells will enter into the body as well. So these senescent cells, these old non-dividing cells that are stuck in our body, are constantly being produced. And they can be produced through exercise, through trauma, through just old age. But generally speaking, these are transient. They're short-lived cells. The body then goes in, clears them out, and regenerates tissues, regenerates cells through stem cells. And it's just part of that normal regenerative property that the body has. The problem, however, is if these senescent cells linger in the body. So that's where it really gets super interesting, I think. These cells are incredibly smart in terms of the functions that they have undercut. And so rather than going through what's called apoptosis, which is cellular programmed cell death, they basically have figured out ways to circumvent that. And so these cells have the ability to prevent apoptosis and to just persist in the body. And as a result, they accumulate. So we're constantly accumulating these old, dead, senescent cells in all of our tissues at all times. And so it becomes more of a problem, generally speaking, after the age of 40, because at that point, we've accumulated a lot of these senescent cells. And so what I think is so interesting is that we are figuring out how to undercut these cells and how to eliminate them from the body. And that's where this whole new cutting edge area of senolytic enters the conversation.
Okay. Would autophagy also be part of the conversation? Like, are we going to talk about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, autophagy is slightly different. I mean,
Okay.
autophagy is really just cellular repair. And so cells have the ability to repair once they're damaged. And that is the process of autophagy, which is this recycling of protein substances that cells have, and they can create more protein substances in their place. And so repair is, again, critically important. But one of the drivers of aging is the loss of autophagy. These cells lose their intelligence, and they can't repair themselves as efficiently as they can when they're youthful. And so it is important then to, if you lose that function, to be able to take the next step and get rid of that cell. And that's where, again, senolytics pop in.
Okay. All right. Let's get into senolytics.
Yeah, I mean, so senolytics, again, brand new field. It started in 2015. There was a study done in mice that figured out two compounds that could target senescent cells specifically, as well as get rid of these senescent cells in the body. And so this was revelatory. We figured out that the drug dasatinib, which is a cancer drug, in combination with quercetin, can target senescent cells specifically and help to promote apoptosis, or cell death, of these senescent cells. And so that 2015 study really opened up this whole area of senolytics and got a lot of scientists very excited by the potential of this, because if we can get rid of these senescent cells that are driving aging, we can literally undercut the aging process altogether, which is pretty remarkable.
That is amazing. I mean, but of course, people are going to say, well, how? How? How do we do this? Because we know diet, lifestyle, eating whole, real foods. Like, is there a way to really nip aging in the bud? Like all of these hallmarks, like, let's see what we can do now at midlife in advance.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of this is very early days. I mean, we're, again, investing a lot of time and money into the area of aging and looking at all of these aspects and trying to figure them out. But they are incredibly complex. What excites me about senolytics, though, is that we're seeing that they do work. They do lower senescent cell load in animals and in humans. And they create meaningful benefits that mice can see, that humans can see. And so I think that the core benefit there is that they are undercutting aging at the source. They're not targeting the downstream manifestations of aging, but rather what is actually driving aging, which are those senescent cells in the body specifically. And so we already know that there are several compounds that are very strongly or very powerfully senolytic in activity. Fisetin seems to be the most active senolytic compound that we have discovered so far. Turmeric is another one. Quercetin is another one. And what's neat, I think, is that this doesn't fall in the domain of pharmaceuticals or over-the-counter drugs. There are natural compounds that are very effective senolytics that we can use very specifically to get that senolytic effect in the body.
So do we have to take these as supplements? Can we eat them? Is because I know, I actually talked to my mom about this. She's like, oh, well, I always put a little bit of turmeric on my eggs. And I'm like, that's great. Or whatever she's eating or whatever she's taking. I'm like, that's great. It's wonderful to eat it, but sometimes it's not enough, right? Like you want to take a highly bioavailable curcumin, right? It's going to give you way more bang for your buck. Like definitely eat the food first, right? Like what do you think about that?
Yeah, diet first. My opinion is that diet is not enough. Even if you're eating a nutrient-dense plant-based diet, supplementing is critically important for so many different reasons. When it comes to senolytics, we know that the compounds that you need to be senolytic in the body, you need to get them in big doses, and they need to be bioavailable. So
Yeah.
quercetin, as an example, quercetin is widely used as a dietary supplement. It's widely found in the diet, such as in yellow onions. It's poorly absorbed. And so this is very well known in the literature. You could eat a lot of quercetin and get very little benefit. But there are some manufacturers of quercetin who have gotten around the bioavailability issue. They've attached a fatty acid to it, which then improves the bioavailability or the usability in the body. And so I think that supplements are much better. And, another example is fisetin. Fisetin is, it's needed in big doses. And so the studies show that you need 20 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And so that's a truckload of fisetin containing vegetables and fruits. Strawberries contain fisetin, but they contain very little fisetin. And you need a big whopping dose of fisetin in order to have that senolytic effect. And so when it comes to senolytics, I would certainly say that supplementation is much better than food.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's just not enough. And I try and explain this. I actually had a post a while ago about, a lot of people say, no, I eat a great diet. I eat whole real foods. I eat organic, but the facts are it's just not enough, period. And there's reasons for that. Like I don't grow my food in my backyard. I don't know the health of the soil. The environment now is way more toxic than it was in 1970 when I was born. You know what I'm saying? So there's many reasons why, right?
You're spot on. Yeah. And I think the topsoil is a problem. It's lacking nutrients. So it's lacking the vitamins and the minerals that we all assume are in our foods.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of issues there. Plus, the body is I think just deficient, and so we need to replete these massive deficiencies over time. And so, I think it's unless you're being very strict in your dietary practice, I think it's very hard to give the body the nutrient load that it needs to be efficiently healthy as it is.
Right. And as a nutritionist myself, I know that saying you have a good diet, it's a very subjective thing, right? Because a good diet can mean so many different things to so many different people, right? And then there's the fact of, if you throw in our genetics and what there may be predispositions to. And so for me, I love targeted supplements for the reason that I know my genetics, Nick. I know them inside and out, and I know my weaknesses. And so I'm trying to be proactive in my wellness now that I have the knowledge, which I didn't have many, many years ago when I had thyroid cancer, right? So there's so many factors that come into play. And I think that if we can be proactive in aging, there's a lot of disease that we can prevent without making medical claims here, people. What do you think of that?
Yeah, there's so many layers to it, So my background's in Ayurveda, and so I certainly look at diet and body types.
Oh, cool! Yes,
and
I
so,
learned that.
So there's I don't think that there's any one diet that is suitable for all people. It really comes to the individual and making personalized decisions based upon your own body type, and make sure that you're ingesting foods that create balance for you. And so, as an example, leafy greens are not suitable for my body type. I think that there's this common perception or misperception, as it is, that everybody should eat more leafy greens. And so they can be nutrient dense, but energetically, they actually will push my body type out of balance. Oh. And so, when I look at diet, I certainly start leaning into the Ayurvedic perspective, which has a whole nother element here.
Okay, well, why don't you tell us, because I do know about body type. Is it Pitta, Kapha?
Vata, right? Pitta, Kapha. Yep, you got it.
There you go. So tell me the basic premise of Ayurvedic medicine.
The basic premise overall is that like increases like, and opposites create balance. So it's a very easy concept, but it's so deep and so vast when you apply that principle to life and you start looking at the energetic properties of food and botanicals and lifestyle choices, and everything has an energetic imprint, and it can be either healthy or not healthy for the body type. And so Ayurveda is not just a medical system. It really is a worldview philosophy, and it looks at everything from an elemental standpoint, meaning there are 5 elements that create everything in the universe, without getting too woo-woo here. There are 5 elements. And so you have space, then you have air, and then you have fire, you have water, you have earth. And so these 5 elements make up everything, including our food, including our body. And so these elements weave together to form those 3 doshas, which are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha.
Okay.
And so if you're a Vata, as an example, you have 2 of the elements. You're predominant in the space and the air element. If you're Pitta, you're predominant in the fire and water element. And then if you're Kapha, you're predominant in the earth and water elements. And so those 5 elements manifest themselves in food and body in specific ways that create body types and energetic imprints. So if your body type is high in, let's just say, fire, you want to do the opposite of fire when it comes to your diet, right? So you don't want to keep adding more fire to your body. You're going to create a lot of fiery problems. So because opposites create balance, according to Ayurveda, then you want to do an anti-fire diet, as it was. So that's, in essence, that's how Ayurveda works. But it all starts with understanding your specific body type, understanding how these elements manifest in your body, and then understanding how you can use food to create balance in your body.
Yeah, that there's so many components to wellness. And I say this all the time. Health and wellness is not linear. You can't just go and take a peptide and call it a day and say, I'm good, right? So, and aging is also not linear. And you have to figure out what is going to help you age better. And what works for you may not work for me. And I love that you mentioned Ayurvedic because, even like Chinese medicine, they have the principle that you don't really eat anything cold, right? But they also have the yin and the yang where you want to balance those. So I just find all of it really fascinating. And I actually take a little bit of everything to figure out what works for me. And I think anyone who's listening to this show, I think a very important facet is just to be very self-aware, first off, on how different practices, how different foods, how different lifestyles affect you personally. Like if I was going to go jogging every day, I think it would put me in the ground, Nick, honestly. It's just not for me. Like, what do you think? In terms of, I know you, obviously, I probably don't have the same body type as you. And, like, what if someone's listening here to this podcast today, where do they begin? How do they start on aging better?
Oh boy. I mean, start where you are. I certainly would recommend working with a health practitioner that understands the intricacies of all of this, whether that's a naturopathic physician, whether that's an integrative practitioner, a functional medicine doctor, an Ayurvedic practitioner. The best way to figure out your body type is to work with somebody who understands the ins and outs of Ayurveda. Of course, there's online questionnaires, and those are limited in their usefulness, but they're a good starting point. I certainly recommend reading. There's a lot of books that are out there, but there's no end all and be all, and that, I think, is your point. I think it's important to pull all of these things together to figure out what's right for you and then to go at it, full bore. And so, you know, I think that's why I like Ayurveda, is because it really is all encompassing. And I like that it's an evolving science. So the fact that we're talking about senolytics over here that are completely cutting edge and modern, and then I'm talking about Ayurveda that's 5,000 years old, I actually think there is a nice, interesting overlap between those two worlds. And for me, it's a whole complete picture still. And I think that, again, there's not any one answer. I don't think you need to focus on Ayurveda in order to be healthy. I think that you need to figure out what works right for you, and then to dive in deep there.
Yeah, I like that because I also always say, I know I personally, I have my health team, okay? And marrying different principles works for me. I can't, for me, I'm a big believer that, okay, well, I might have an Ayurvedic medicine practitioner. I might have a naturopath doctor where I get, other things from. I have an endocrinologist because I don't have a thyroid. I have, you know what I'm saying? Like, but having a team is what is going to help you age better. Bottom line, that's just totally my opinion there. But I'm like, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, people, and say, my GP is going to know everything about therapeutic grade supplements, because that ain't happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're spot on. And I try to simplify everything. When I'm talking with patients or anybody that's interested in health, I can speak at great length about Ayurveda or some of the latest cutting edge science. But, when I'm talking about what somebody can do today to improve their health, one of the concepts is this idea of the 3 Bs. And so I like to talk to people about, number 1, moving your body, number 2, moving your breath, and then the third thing is moving your bowels.
Oh, yeah.
If you just focus on those very 3 foundational ideas, the body, the breath, and the bowels, it can do wonders for your health. And I think that your body can spontaneously move towards health if you are just implementing those 3 things on a daily basis.
Oh, I love that because, it's interesting. Knowledge is power. And that's the entire reason I started this podcast almost 3 years ago, because a lot of these conversations are just not had in the conventional world of, I call, listen, we need our Western healthcare system. I'm not knocking it, but it's moved more to sick care versus healthcare and proactive care. So having conversations like this is important. And for people to just start reading, start knowing, even still, like I have heard people say, oh, I have no issues with my digestion. And then you delve a little deeper and they're like, oh, but I only go to the bathroom, maybe twice a week. What?
Yeah.
That's a digestive problem. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like knowledge is power. Know that that's not okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm fortunate again that I think people are interested in learning at this stage, which is the first time that I've ever seen this on such a mass level. I think before, people were really uninterested in this; they were uninterested in eating organic foods. But the conversation has shifted, and in part due to social media, oddly. So I like that. I think there's an opportunity, and I think the people that are truly interested in doing a deep dive into health, they have the ability to do that. There's resources everywhere nowadays.
Yeah. Now, another interesting topic is, you see, and I have to bring this up on because you mentioned social media. On social media, what's happening a lot is you're going to see a lot of these people in the wellness industry. You're going to have to find people that you trust to follow. And I think trust is key because you have some individuals who are personal trainers who have no background in in supplementation or therapeutic grade supplements that are telling people what to take. And then there's, so you have to be very careful in and not saying everybody has to be a doctor, but you have to have the credentials to back up what you're saying.
Yeah, and we all need to be mindful that a lot of the influencers that are out there are being paid, and so
Totally.
that's something that is under all of those conversations. And so, if you're mindful of that, I think you can take in all of that with a healthy dose of skepticism. You can pull what's actual, what's truthful, what's important for you, and push aside all the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, we kind of briefly talked about this offline, and I find this a very interesting topic that came about in the news over the last few months. There was this debate on whether the FDA was going to classify aging as a disease or not. And in the end, it's not classified as a disease. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Nick.
Yeah, thankfully. I mean, aging is not a disease. It's a natural, healthy, normal part of what we do as humans. And if the FDA would have classified aging as a disease, that would have been problematic on so many different fronts. I mean, I work firmly in the dietary supplement industry, and we cannot touch anything that deals with diseases or infers treatment. And so there is a very strong line between what we can and can't do. And so if aging then becomes a disease, we can't touch it. We can't mention aging. We can't create products that target aging. But fortunately, because they didn't, hopefully they won't ever.
Hopefully not.
We can still go at it because, again, all we're doing is supporting aging as a healthy, normal process in the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you on that, because with something being declared as an official disease, then comes maybe some restrictions on some of the supplements and some of the things, because I know myself as a registered holistic nutritionist, I do not diagnose, cure, heal disease. I'm not a doctor, right? And I also don't make any kind of medical claims. But as soon as that becomes prevalent, that this is a disease, which it's not declared as, it can be a problem for the natural healthcare industry overall.
Yeah, it really would devastate the whole industry.
Mm-hmm.
And the FDA makes some questionable decisions. So, we'll all be watching it over time. Recently they pulled NMN from
Yes.
use by dietary supplements, and NMN is a vitamin B3 derivative. It's been used forever, but now it's because it's being studied as a quote unquote drug, it's off limits for dietary supplement brands and the whole industry as a whole. So that's problematic. There's a few examples, NAC, N-acetylcysteine being another one.
Yes.
But we're working through those issues little by little. I would say as a whole, the dietary supplement space is safe. I think we're going to be allowed to continue to build really awesome, meaningful products for people for years to come. But it's critically important that we are able to do that, because I really do believe that dietary supplementation is critical to healthcare, not disease care, but healthcare, the promotion of health in the body. And so if we take away those tools from individuals, I would really worry about that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Obviously, we're in this more natural in healthcare, health wellness industry, let's just say.
Yeah.
Now, you know a lot about nootropics. Talk to me about those. How do those help with aging?
Well, I mean, the brain is an organ, and just like all the other organs in the body, the brain ages. And so we need to make sure that we're giving the brain the proper nutrition, and that we're elevating the brain as we age, because again, our memory goes down, our focus comes down, these elements come down, mood changes. There are ways to shift those in positive ways using dietary supplements and using nootropics. The area of nootropics has been around since the 70s. Nootropic basically just means mind turning. So it's anything that can really enhance cognition overall. Again, this almost falls over into the areas of pharmaceuticals and over-the-counter drugs as well. There are some kind of gray market nootropics, racetams as an example, that are very effective. When you take them, they work immediately, but they are not allowed in dietary supplement space. What we can use in the dietary supplement space are vitamins, minerals, amino acids, botanicals, that are not in the area of pharmaceuticals and OTCs. And fortunately, there are a lot of nutrients that are nootropic that we are allowed to use. And so this area of nootropics and brain health really is just exploding right now in the wellness industry. And Qualia, or Neurohacker Collective, builds a number of these products that work very well. They include a lot of the most interesting stacks that are on the market. So when it comes to nootropics, it's interesting to stack these ingredients together so that they have these synergistic effects. One example of that is caffeine and L-theanine. And that's considered the most basic stack that's out there. Tons of research on it, on both of those ingredients, and then on that combination as well. And so we know how caffeine works. L-theanine is an amino acid that has complementary and almost balancing effects to caffeine. And so green tea contains both of those. It contains caffeine, it contains L-theanine, but it contains those in a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 times caffeine, 2 times more caffeine than L-theanine. But this awesome nootropic stack, when you flip those 2 ingredients, so you actually give the body more theanine, a little bit less caffeine, it has these really wonderful benefits for focus and for cognition. And so that's a really central core nootropic stack that you find widely used in the dietary supplement space. But again, there's a lot of different ingredients. There's a lot of different stacks that are very effective for elevating cognition overall.
Do you think that any of these ingredients might actually, so it's great for focus, it's great for brain health. You get like pretty immediate effects. I take green tea every day because I know that if I take it, I'm getting a much higher dose versus drinking 1 cup of, I can't be sitting there drinking 20 cups of green tea a day.
Right.
So I take it. And then I also take L-theanine now and again. I take them both. And do you think that any of these nootropics actually help the brain age better? Or do you think it's more of it's helping me now?
There are immediate benefits, and then there are definitely long-term benefits depending on what you use. Fish oil contains omega-3 fatty acids, and the brain is predominantly made of fats.
Yep.
And so if you're avoiding fats in the diet, you're going to have problems with brain function later in life. And so it's important to make sure that you're getting the right kind of fats in order to feed the brain structures themselves. Another area that's interesting is BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. And BDNF helps improve neuroplasticity. Yeah. So it strengthens neurons and neuron connections and the synapse and the communication between all the neurons in the brain. And so there's some really interesting research right now looking at how you can regenerate brain neurons, which we thought previously wasn't possible. But now we're finding that it is in fact possible. And there's some interesting ingredients that can promote that. So I certainly think it can be both. I think it can be immediate, a caffeine theanine blend, for example. And then there are some nutritional aspects that can take effect long-term and be beneficial to really counter the effects of aging.
And then there's just the whole fact of, if you walk around day to day, loving life, kind of having a happy but, chill disposition, that's going to help you age better. And I know L-theanine is one of those, one of those amino acids that I find really cool. I've been using L-theanine. I kind of pulse it on and off here and there. And then the other ones are the adaptogenic herbs, right? Which
Yep.
everybody talks
Yep.
about, like ashwagandha. Like that's actually one that I never pulse out. I don't know. It works for me. And rhodiola, both of them. Like it works for me. And I think that that in and of itself is going to help me age better because I'm not overreacting to everything. My nervous system isn't on high alert all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to that list GABA. It
Uh,
is something that I cycle in and out as well. It has a similar effect, and we know that GABA and L-theanine promote alpha brain waves. And alpha brain waves is kind of that relaxed yet alert state. Typically, we only achieve alpha brain waves when we're meditating, or we're doing long distance running, or we practice yoga. But there's a way to do that through nutrition. And so if you can be in that alpha brainwave state, it just makes your day a little bit better. And I think it changes how you relate to life, how you relate to people. And certainly there's consequences as it relates to aging if you're in that state as well. So I totally agree. I use ashwagandha every single day and have for years. And it really is my buffer from stress. And rhodiola is a fantastic one as well. I do find that it does stimulate me a little bit too much, so I need to be careful. I do cycle that one on and off for that reason. But ashwagandha promotes GABA formation in the body. It binds to the GABA receptors. Really, it's just a fantastic, well-rounded botanical. You know, in Ayurveda, it's specific for men. It certainly means that women can take it too, but it really has strong benefits for men. And kind of the sister botanical of ashwagandha is known as shatavari. And so for women listeners out there, it's worth checking out shatavari as an alternative to
I've
ashwagandha.
never even heard of that, Nick.
Yeah,
I've heard
shatavari.
of Shandra
Yep, sure. Yep.
for women is
Berry,
very
fantastic
good.
from Chinese medicine. Yep.
I haven't heard of this one though.
So
Cool.
shatavari is it basically comes from the Sanskrit words that mean she who possesses 1,000 husbands.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
there's obvious fertility benefits, libido benefits, beauty benefits. It's said that it gives you the energy of the moon. So
How
it's,
have I never heard of this?
I don't know. I mean, I know because I don't see it out there.
No.
But individuals that are really well versed in Ayurveda know shatavari very well. I mean, it's
Very
wild
cool.
asparagus. It's an adaptogen. It's not stimulating. It brings a lot of that water element into the body and really just helps to nourish all of the tissues and the hormone system.
That is beautiful. I'm so glad because I actually wrote it down. I'm going to look into that myself. And isn't ashwagandha, I don't know, I've read something about ashwagandha and testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
There's a connection there, right? It doesn't actually increase testosterone, or does it?
So by definition, all adaptogens are safe and non-toxic.
Right.
And so if you're a woman, you take ashwagandha, you shouldn't expect that you're going to have side effects. So you're not going to increase your testosterone to such an extent that you're going to start getting facial hair and start, getting a bald spot.
Right.
That's not how these things work. And so it's not a direct increase in testosterone. How adaptogens work in general is that they tonify the HPA axis, which is the hormone producing axis in the body. And so adaptogens will, by definition, they'll bring you up if you're too low, or they'll bring you down if you're too high.
Right.
And so they just create balance. They give you what your body's needing. And so if you're needing more testosterone as a man or a woman, it's going to give you that benefit in that area. But if you have too much testosterone as a man, it's actually going to balance that out. And so that's what's beautiful about adaptogens. They help you adapt in ways that promote health. And that's why I'm with you. I think it's important to take ashwagandha or shatavari or another adaptogen every single day because it just creates that balancing effect over and over and over.
And then I did a show last year about adaptogenic mushrooms because that's massive now. I mean, everybody's talking about adaptogenic mushrooms, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation. There's a little bit of research in that area. Reishi
Yeah.
has a lot of research. Um, I again, my feet are firmly planted in the world of Ayurveda. Ayurveda does not look at mushrooms favorably.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so mushrooms are not used traditionally in the Ayurvedic tradition, and so Ayurveda is very mindful about, again, the energetic imprint that these botanicals leave on the
Yeah.
body. They're
Yeah.
especially interested in how they affect the mind. And so in Ayurveda, there's 3 different qualities that everything has. It's either sattvic, tamasic, or rajasic. Um, in essence, mushrooms are tamasic. They have a lot of that tamasic energy, which when you ingest tamasic food or botanicals, it dulls the mind or numbs the mind. And so from an Ayurvedic perspective, a yogic perspective, a meditation perspective, mushrooms are not viewed favorably within that tradition. And so I'm heavily biased because of that worldview. I certainly think that mushrooms are invaluable. And there's some really good research. And obviously, people use them all over the place and they get benefit from them. So I don't want to steer anybody away from them. I
Okay.
just personally view them differently than most people.
Okay. Okay. Fair. That's fair. So we kind of we touched on a lot of different things. Holy.
Yes. Yes.
Um, we we talked about nootropics, we talked about some herbs, some adaptogenic herbs, we talked about the hallmarks of aging, we talked about, oh my gosh, like what didn't we talk about? Is there anything that I missed that you want to cover off?
Um, you know, I'll go back to where we started, the area of cellular senescence and senolytics. I It's such an interesting area of holistic healthcare right now. It's still early days, but the nice thing is that we're able to utilize these nutrients now to get benefits at any age of life. So I highly recommend doing a deep dive into the world of senolytics. Um, Neurohacker Collective has created a product called Qualia Senolytic. We have a bunch of information on our website on neurohacker.com that explains the ins and outs of the formulation. It goes into great depth about each of the ingredients and explains a lot of the cutting edge research in this area right now. And so I personally am very excited about this whole area. And the reason that I like this, I think in part is because you can take senolytics for a very short time and get the benefit. So it's not something you need to take day in and day out, like ashwagandha as an example. Senolytics are meant to be used for a very short stint, and then you stop taking them. So it's almost like a detox regimen. So you
Oh,
would use a product for 2 days, and then you stop for, let's say, 4 weeks to give your body a break. And so you pulse with these things, and you can use them 1 time per month. You can use them seasonally. You can use them 1 time annually. It's not a huge investment on time and money in order to get this healthy aging benefit that the senolytics provide.
what are there any contraindications to these?
Not that we know of. Again, you need senescent cells for certain activities in the body. One activity is wound healing. And so when you create a wound, you basically have senescent cells, and the senescent cells are an important part of the wound regeneration and the healing process. And so, to my knowledge, only real contraindication would be if you have a major wound that you're trying to heal presently. Then I would not take a senolytic, because you need those senescent cells in order to heal the body at that point.
And so if I was to start on something like that, I would just pulse it in and out for like, I guess I would, all the information is on your website, right?
It is, yeah. And so, there's a number of senolytics on the market, none that are as complex as Qualia senolytic. And a lot of them are continuous dosing. And in my mind, that's just not the way to go when you're dealing with senolytics. The research is pretty clear that you need to, it's called a hit and run regimen. You need to do these short, intense stints, and then you need to move on. Continuous dosing is not as effective when it comes to cellular senescence. And so, yeah, so I highly recommend finding whatever works for you. It's, if you're over the age of 40, it's probably a good idea to get on senolytics. If you're under the age of 40, I don't think there's any harm in starting something of this nature. I think it's important to take care of cells at a very early age and through the course of life. And so if you have tools that can do that at a younger age, I certainly would get those on board. I didn't have senolytics available to me growing up, right? It's a brand new thing. It's still early days, but we now have these tools available to us today.
And you can start that at any age, like what you were saying. You can start now. But here's a question for you. What are some of those ingredients that we talked about in that formulation?
Yeah, so Qualia senolytic is a blend of 9 botanical extracts. It contains 2 of the most well-researched senolytics, which are quercetin and fisetin, at the therapeutic dose that we know works from studies. There are also, we have luteolin, we have a curcumin that's specific to brain health. And so we wanted to make sure that we were taking care of the brain in terms of senolytic activity. So we're using a very specific extract that gets up into the brain tissue specifically. We have a mixture of science-backed ingredients. We also are introducing a couple novel ingredients. We've looked at the different pathways in the body that senescent cells use to persist or linger. And so we know that there are certain compounds from milk thistle and soybean oil that can undercut those processes very specifically. So it's a nice blend of tried and true ingredients that we know work, as well as introducing a couple new ingredients that will be up and coming in this category.
Will I feel a difference if I start taking these?
Yeah, I think the older you are, the higher the likelihood that you'll feel the benefits. Of course, everybody's different. We accumulate senescent cells at different rates and in different tissues. So it really depends where you are accumulating senescent cells in your body. If you are accumulating them in the skin, which leads to sagginess, loss of elasticity, wrinkles.
I'm listening.
You're going to see a difference. And so, because again, you get senescent cells in your skin as well. If you have senescent cells in your brain, you might feel a difference. Your focus could be on point. Your memory could be improved. Your mood can be improved. And so senescent cells literally accumulate in every tissue in the body. However, senolytics are tissue specific. So not every senolytic is going to touch every senescent cell in the body. And so that's why it's important to do a number of different senolytic compounds to make sure that you're giving the body the greatest chance to eliminate the most senescent cells.
Yeah, I kind of, as soon as you said, it can affect beauty and aging, I'm like, I'm in. I'm in. You're speaking my language. And what also kind of makes sense is that, if you're someone like myself, I do a lot, like a lot.
Yeah.
So I would probably feel it less than somebody who's just starting on a real wellness journey to age better, right?
I think that's a good assumption. Again, we don't know that, but if you've taken care of your health, in all likelihood, when you get older, you're going to have less senescent cells. And so I think it just really depends. I will say quickly that we did run a pilot study on qualia senolytic in individuals that had joint pain and joint discomfort. And we saw pretty significant improvement in most of the participants over the course of 3 doses of using the product. And so, again, it's
Hold
hard.
on a second.
Yeah.
3 doses?
3 doses. So we actually did, we tried to make it a little bit easier for study participants rather than doing a dose, waiting a month, doing another dose, waiting a month, and another dose. We actually gapped the doses by 2 weeks. So over the course of a month and a half, we gave participants 3 doses of qualia senolytic, which is a pretty big whop-in dose. But we wanted to make sure, number one, that it was tolerable, and that number 2, the experience was tangible, that it was felt. And so over the course of those 3 doses, we saw a significant benefit, not only in
Amazing.
quality of life, but in joint stiffness and improvement of activities of daily living. Right now we can't measure or assess the reduction of senescent cells in the body. And so it's not available to us. We're trying to figure that out presently as a whole industry. But we can look at these broader outcomes, such as joint health, to say whether or not the product has benefit in the body.
Oh, well, that's huge for somebody who is elderly, like we were talking about with our parents. They wake up and they're like, oh, this hurts and this hurts. And, I think that would really improve their quality of life, right?
No doubt. And again, I think that everybody's experience for the most part is going to be unique taking this product, which is fantastic. It gives you what you need.
Yeah.
The other area is, when you look at muscle function too, we know that your muscles will accumulate senescent cells over time. And the research is showing that when you accumulate these senescent cells, it's preventing the body from growing new muscle. And so as we age, we more or less lose the ability to build new muscle. There's a whole area called sarcopenia, muscle loss. And so
a lot about
muscle is critically important. And senescent cells are tied into this whole conversation. And so there is research showing that certain compounds can go into muscles and help the body get rid of and eliminate those senescent cells, which then can reinvigorate muscle tissues so that you can grow new muscle cells, you can build healthy muscle fibers, and potentially just start growing more body mass, which is critically important as we age.
That is massive, massive. Wow. Okay, well, let us know. Tell us where we can find you. This has been such a great conversation.
Yeah, neurohacker.com. We have so much information on our website as it relates to all of our products, interesting biohacking tips and techniques, a lot more in the area of senescence and senolytics. And Neurohacker is on all the social media fronts as well. So Facebook, Instagram, etc. That's the best way to catch us.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation.